My name is Clarice Whitmore. I never thought the house I once called home would become a battlefield. And yet there I was, standing outside the same red brick porch I'd known since I was 5 with my brother beside me, staring at a locked door that no longer recognized us. It had been 19 years since Emmett left Asheville, 19 years in the Navy. He served in Yemen and Afghanistan in places he never spoke of. He wrote letters sometimes, always short, always respectful, never complaining. Now standing beside me in his old dress uniform, he looked like a ghost of discipline. The creases were perfect. His cap rested tightly under his arm. He didn't speak much on the drive home, and I didn't push him. Some things don't need words. We'd been raised by Grandpa Whitmore after our mother died young. Our father, well, he remarried. And then slowly he disappeared from our lives. Deborah, our stepmother, was always polite in front of Grandpa, but we knew where we stood. Decoration. Leftovers from a former life. The house still looked the same, a little older maybe. The paint was fading, but the sign over the front porch was still there. The Whitmore House, 1926, hand-carved by Grandpa himself and polished every spring. It was more than a house. It was our history. I rang the bell, once, twice, nothing. I pressed the button harder. Finally, the intercom crackled to life. "Who is it?" The voice was sharp, unmistakably Deborah. "It's me, Clarice. We're here with Emmett. He just got back." Silence. Then, why I swallowed. "He wanted to see the house. He's been gone a long time." More silence. Then came the words I still hear sometimes in my sleep. "You mean this homeless mess you brought here like a stray dog?" I froze. "This is Grandpa's house," I replied, my voice tight. "You know that. Emmett grew up here." Deborah laughed a cold, rehearsed laugh. "That man gave nothing to your brother, and certainly not to you. Now get off my porch before I call the police." "Deborah," I said, stepping closer to the door, "we're not here to fight. He's back. He's your—" She opened the door, just like that. And for a second, I thought maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe she saw him in uniform and remembered who he was. But instead, she stepped out in a silk blouse, diamonds at her ears, and rage in her eyes. "You think I owe either of you anything?" she hissed. Emmett stood behind me, still silent. "This is Grandpa's," I said softly. Before I could say more, her hand flew. She slapped me, hard. I stumbled backward. The porch light flickered as I tasted blood. Then she shoved Emmett. "Out," she said, low and vicious. "Both of you. Off my property." I caught myself on the railing. My lips stung. Emmett didn't react. His boots scraped the concrete as he took one slow step back. Neighbors turned on their porch lights. Curtains moved. Nobody opened a door. The door slammed shut. And through the upstairs window, I saw him. My father. He stood behind the curtain holding a mug, watching. He didn't say a word, didn't even blink, just stood there silent still. I looked back at Emmett. His face was unreadable, but I knew what he felt, because I felt it too. It wasn't just the slap or the door in our face. It was the quiet, the erasure. That night we slept in the car. He didn't take off the uniform, and I didn't cry. Not until morning. The morning came cold. I woke with my neck aching from the angle of the seatbelt, the cheap fabric cutting into my skin. Emmett hadn't moved all night. His back was still straight, his eyes open. He didn't sleep. I wasn't sure if he even blinked. There was something deeply painful in that stillness. It wasn't grief, not exactly. It was older than that, like the pain had turned to stone inside him a long time ago and just never melted. Outside the windshield, the Whitmore house stood untouched. Pale yellow light filtered through the curtains. Inside, someone was making coffee. I imagined the kitchen still smelled like cinnamon rolls and wood polish. I imagined Deborah pouring 2 cups, one for her, one for him. Not for us. "Come on," I whispered. "Let's get breakfast." He nodded once. We drove to a small diner on Jefferson Street, the kind of place where the waitresses call you hun, and your coffee's refilled before you even ask. We sat by the window. Emmett ordered nothing. I didn't eat much either. My phone buzzed. I glanced down. An email from the Asheville Historic Society. A press release. Deborah Whitmore to be honored at the 18th Annual Preservation Gala for her contributions to heritage conservation. Guest of honor. The Whitmore House. 1926. I blinked. Guest of honor. Our house. She was using Grandpa's legacy, the very place she'd shoved us away from, as her ticket to local stardom. I slid the phone across the table. Emmett read it, then handed it back wordlessly. Do you remember when he used to let us race down the hall in socks? I asked, trying to soften the mood. He'd pretend to be angry, but he always timed us. No response. Or the summer he built that tree swing and told us it was better than Disney World. Still, nothing. Then finally, Emmett said, he never liked her. It was quiet, but firm. I nodded. After breakfast, I made a call to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Nora Mitchell. We went to high school together. She was the smartest in our year with a scholarship to Columbia and a stare that could freeze boys mid-sentence. Now she was a probate attorney. She answered on the second ring. Clarice. Hi, Nora. I need help. It didn't take long. We met that afternoon at her office, a narrow room above a print shop filled with legal books and the smell of old paper. She listened while I told her everything. From the slap to the locked door, from the uniform to the silence. Then she asked, did your grandfather leave a will? Yes, I said quickly. I think so. He said something before he died. Something about leaving the house to Emmett. He didn't trust Deborah. Do you have any documents? Anything. I hesitated. There's a box. Grandpa gave it to Emmett. Said it was just keepsakes. We drove back to the car. Emmett was still sitting there, staring out the window like nothing had changed. Do you have Grandpa's box? I asked. He reached into the back seat, pulled out a battered wooden chest. The hinges creaked. Inside an old pocket watch, a ribbon-bound stack of letters, and a sealed envelope marked private, for Emmett only. Under that, a flash drive. We looked at each other. Back at Nora's office, she connected the drive to her laptop. There it was, a scanned document. Grandpa's handwriting, dated just 6 months before he passed. It wasn't notarized, but it was detailed. A personal statement, a letter of intent. And in it, one line stood out. The house, the land, and all attached accounts are to go to Emmett Whitmore. He has carried enough for this family. Nora exhaled. This is big. But without the original or a formal notarized copy, it might not be enough. I swallowed. What do we do? We start digging, she said. We find out who owns the house now, how it was transferred, and if we're lucky, where it went wrong. The next day she called. It's owned by Veritas Property Group LLC, she said. Registered just 2 months after your grandfather died. The paperwork lists you, Clarice, as the seller. What you allegedly signed a transfer agreement selling the property to Veritas for $1. There's a notarized signature. I never signed anything. I believe you. But legally, how can they get away with that forgery? She said. It happens more than you'd think. Nora sent over a copy of the document. It looked official, clean, crisp, and there, in perfect cursive, was my name. Except it wasn't mine. Not really. I don't loop my L's like that. And the flourish at the end, I've never written that way in my life. Nora spoke gently. We'll challenge it. I know the notary listed here. He lost his license 3 years ago. This was done dirty. I blinked hard. Clarice, she said quietly. They planned this. She was right. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. And it had been in motion for a while. I thought about that afternoon. Weeks after Grandpa passed, when I stopped by the house. Deborah was in the den tossing papers into the fireplace. What are you doing? I'd asked. Cleaning up your grandfather's mess, she'd said. The air had smelled like old ink and burning leather. I thought it was junk. Now I knew better. She'd burned the will, the real one. The silence in Nora's office was thick. Finally, she said, if we're lucky, we might still have a shot. We just need to prove one thing. What? That the original intent wasn't what they're claiming. I looked over at Emmett. He still hadn't said much, but then he pulled something else out of the box. A tiny key. Grandpa said this opened something in the shed, he said. I thought it was just his old fishing gear. Nora leaned forward. If there's anything left of his locked up, we need to find it. And so that night, for the first time in almost a decade, I returned to the Whitmore house, not as a daughter, not as a guest, but as someone chasing a ghost. We parked 2 streets away. Quiet. Dark. The same shadows stretched across the sidewalk like memories refusing to fade. I stood by the back gate. The lock was rusted, but Emmett broke it easily. We moved silently to the shed. The key fit. Inside, old tools, broken shelves, rusted hinges. But in the far back under a sheet of canvas, we found it. A fireproof lockbox, still sealed, still waiting. The fireproof lockbox was heavier than I expected. Dust coated the surface thick like time itself. I wiped it with my sleeve, my fingers trembling slightly. Emmett said nothing, only stood behind me like a silent shadow. We carried it back to the car and opened it in the dim interior light. Inside, carefully arranged and untouched, were 2 things: a yellowed envelope sealed with wax and a stack of old mini DV tapes, Grandpa's handwriting labeling each one with dates spanning over 10 years. Nora was already waiting when we arrived at her office. She pulled on gloves, reverent, like a surgeon preparing for something sacred. She broke the wax on the envelope, unfolded the document slowly. It was the original will, notarized, witnessed, dated, and at the bottom, Grandpa's signature, confident and firm. Everything left to Emmett Whitmore: the house, the land, the account tied to the family trust. Nora didn't speak for a full minute. Then she looked up, eyes sharper than I'd ever seen them. "They knew this existed," she said. "They tried to destroy it, but they missed one." I leaned back in the chair, the wave of relief too heavy to feel like victory. I didn't smile. I didn't even breathe easier. Because it wasn't over. "They still have the house," I said quietly. "They still have the narrative." Nora nodded. "But we have the truth now." We spent the next week assembling every piece: the fake deed, the fraudulent notary, the fabricated sale to Veritas Property Group. Turns out Veritas was a shell company set up under Deborah's maiden name. One that had only made one purchase, the Whitmore house. But there was more. One of the tapes, dated just a month before Grandpa's death, showed him speaking directly into his old camera. He was sitting at his desk, glasses slipping down his nose, his voice gravelly and slow. "If anything happens to me," he said, "this house goes to Emmett. He served his country, he held this family together when I couldn't, and he deserves a home more than anyone else I know." It wasn't flashy, it wasn't emotional, it was real, raw, undeniable. We clipped the footage, cleaned the audio, burned it to a secure drive. This was our weapon. But then, just when it felt like the tide was turning, Deborah struck back. She filed a restraining order, claimed we had shown up unannounced, caused emotional distress, and threatened her safety. Attached to the filing were security camera screenshots of Emmett and me outside the house. No audio, no context, just 2 figures in the dark. She also filed a civil suit: attempted fraud, harassment, property invasion. Her lawyer released a statement to the local paper. "They are exploiting the memory of a grieving family. Ms. Whitmore has only ever acted to protect what was left in her care." The town whispered. At the market, a woman muttered, "Is that the daughter trying to steal the house?" At the post office, a man glanced sideways at Emmett and said under his breath, "PTSD's no joke. He shouldn't be out." It didn't matter what was true. It mattered what people believed. And right now they believed her. I couldn't sleep, could barely think. Then late one night my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. "If you're really a Whitmore, meet me by the old mill. 11 p.m. Come alone." I hesitated. It could be a trap. It could be worse. But something about the words felt familiar. I told Emmett nothing. I left a note on the dashboard just in case. The old mill sat abandoned near the river. Its roof had collapsed years ago and the front doors were chained shut, but the back fence had a gap wide enough for someone who remembered childhood dares. I stepped through the darkness, and then he appeared. Gray hair, oil-stained jacket, eyes like coal, sharp and watchful. "Clarice," he said. "Do I know you?" He nodded once. Might not remember me. Name's Franklin, worked for your granddad. Maintained the house back in the day. Fixed his old Cadillac when no one else would touch it. My breath caught. I remember. He held out a flash drive. I saw something you need to see. I took it. He shifted uncomfortably. A week after your granddad died, Deborah had people coming and going from that house all hours. Film crew, lights, costumes. I stared at him. What kind of film crew? The fake kind, he said. She was filming something. Same study, same desk, same sweater your granddad always wore. But it wasn't him, it was something else. I felt cold spread from my chest outward, like a reenactment. He nodded. Too real to be harmless. I think they made their own will video. My legs went weak. Back at Nora's office, we played The Drive. Grainy footage, sloppy angles, but enough. Actors. Set design mimicking Grandpa's study. A man who looked eerily like him, reading a scripted speech, and behind the camera clearly heard Deborah's voice. Directing. Coaching. Say the house goes to me. Don't forget to emphasize trust. We need legal-sounding words. It wasn't just fraud. It was a production. A lie engineered with precision. Nora stared at the screen. This changes everything. The next morning, she filed for an emergency injunction. Within 48 hours, we had a court date. And just like that, we were back in front of the people who once called us family. Deborah sat in designer gray, her face composed. Her lawyer opened with a speech about delusional children and fragile memories. He claimed I had forged documents in an attempt to reclaim a house I voluntarily surrendered. He said Emmett was mentally unstable and had created a hostile environment. He even accused us of planting fake video evidence. Then it was our turn. Nora stood. No theatrics, no anger, just facts. She submitted the original will, the authenticated documents, the expert testimony from a handwriting analyst. And then with the courtroom silent, she played the tape. Grandpa's real voice filled the room. Calm, steady. This house belongs to Emmett. It's not about tradition, it's about loyalty. I didn't look at Deborah. I looked at my father, sitting 3 rows back, expressionless. When the tape ended, Deborah stood. I have something to submit as well. She clicked her laptop. Another video played. Grandpa again, sitting in the same chair, saying different words, leaving everything to Deborah. The judge frowned. Nora leaned toward me. Deep fake, she whispered. She stood. Your Honor, we request immediate forensic analysis of this footage. We have reason to believe this is synthetic media, a fabrication designed to mislead the court. The judge nodded. The session recessed. We stepped into the hallway. I wanted to scream. Instead, I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. We were so close. Too close to lose now. Then a voice. I saw it someone said behind me. I turned. Franklin. He stepped forward, nodding toward the courtroom. I recognized the sweater, he said. I donated it. After the funeral. It was missing a button. Had a bleach stain. They used it in that video. Same chair, same clock. They recreated the whole room. He turned to the judge's assistant. I can testify. And he did. Under oath, Franklin explained everything. How he'd seen the film crew. How Deborah had orchestrated it all. How he'd kept silent until now. The judge called for a final forensic review. Later that evening, the results came back. Deborah's video fabricated. Synthetic audio. AI-modified facial movement. A lie. In the back row, my father stood. He didn't speak. He didn't look at me. He simply walked out of the courtroom without a word. But it didn't matter, because when the judge returned, she issued the ruling. Full revocation of all property transfers. Criminal investigation for Deborah, restitution for damages. And the house. The house was ours again. I didn't go to the sentencing. Deborah was let out in handcuffs a week after the ruling. Fraud, perjury. Conspiracy to falsify legal documents. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She didn't even look back. Just walked down the steps of the courthouse like she was leaving a movie set that had wrapped filming. Her husband, my father, didn't appear in court that day. He didn't respond to Nora's letters. No apology. No explanation. Nothing. It was strange how quiet justice felt. like it should have come with thunder. But instead, it arrived with a sigh. The morning after the final ruling, I returned to the Whitmore house, alone. I parked 2 streets away just like I had that night we'd been locked out. The same cracked sidewalks, the same flickering streetlight above the mailbox, except this time I had the key. Ruth had handed it to me the day before with a simple nod. No speech, no drama, just a silver key on a plain ring. I stood at the gate for a long while. The house looked smaller than I remembered, shrunk by time maybe, or by the truth. The curtains were still drawn. The porch light was out. There was a slight layer of pollen on the windows. Dust clung to the shutters. I turned the key. The door opened with a reluctant click. No alarms, no shouting, just silence. It smelled like stillness inside, not decay, just abandonment, like the house had been waiting for someone to return. I didn't explore, not at first. I walked straight through the foyer past the staircase into the kitchen. The table was still there. Same scratch on the edge from when I'd fallen off a chair at age 7. The mark where Emmett had carved a tiny E+C with a butter knife when we were kids. I sat. I stayed there for what felt like hours, just breathing, just remembering. The next day I came back with cleaning supplies, gloves, trash bags, disinfectant wipes. The day after that I brought boxes. On the third day I brought the sign, the Whitmore house from 1926. I found it tossed behind paint cans in the shed. Covered in mildew, a corner cracked. I carried it out into the yard, sat on the back steps, scrubbed it slowly with warm water and a cloth until the dust gave way to the original grain. I didn't rush. It wasn't about the sign. It was about everything it had meant and everything we almost lost. By the time the wood glowed again, the sun was already setting. I carried it back to the porch, stood on a stepladder and screwed it into place above the doorway. No one watched. No one clapped. There was no audience for this moment. Only me. And silence. Emmett didn't come back right away. He didn't even respond to my texts at first. I didn't blame him. Some wounds need more than justice. They need space. So I left him something. On the kitchen table under the clean tablecloth, I placed an envelope. Inside, I wrote, "When you're ready, this is still yours. No expectations, no pressure, just a place where you still belong." And I left. Not forever, but long enough. I stayed in a small rental across town, focused on restoring my sanity more than the house. Nora and I still spoke. She handled the remaining paperwork, reclaiming utilities, freezing Deborah's accounts, reversing the fake deed. Every time her name came up in an email, I felt less anger. Just a dull ache, like something removed but scarred. A few weeks later, Nora called. "There's something you should see." I met her at her office. She handed me a newspaper, folded neatly. "Front page," she said. The photo was grainy, a courtroom shot. The headline read, "Fake Will Scandal Rocks Preservation Gala Honoree. Local Veteran Wins Legal Battle Over Inheritance." Below that, a subheading, "Decorated Navy Vet Reclaims Ancestral Home After Deepfake Fraud Uncovered." It felt surreal. But it was done. I walked the house again that weekend. Alone. Room by room, I opened windows, let the air in, sat in Grandpa's old chair, listened to the floor creak the way it always had. Everything was smaller now, but not less sacred. In the attic, I found a photo album. I sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, flipping through faded pages. Mom, Grandpa, me in overalls, Emmett with a slingshot. I stopped on one photo. The 4 of us, me, Emmett, Grandpa, and Dad. Before Deborah. Before everything fractured. We looked happy. Or maybe we just looked whole. Later that night, I stood on the porch and stared out into the street. A car turned the corner. A familiar one. He parked at the curb. Didn't get out right away. Just sat there. Then finally Emmett stepped out. No uniform this time, just jeans and a jacket. He looked older, tired, but steadier than I'd ever seen him. I didn't say anything. I opened the door. He walked up the steps slowly, paused in front of the sign, ran his fingers across the letters, then stepped inside. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just stood in the living room, 2 survivors of the same storm, breathing the same air. "This place smells the same," he finally said. I smiled. "I think it waited for you." He looked at me, then at the envelope still resting on the table. He picked it up, didn't open it, just held it. We sat at the kitchen table, no words for a while. Then he whispered, "I thought he forgot me. He never did. He left me everything." "Yes," I said, "because you never left him." His eyes didn't tear, but mine did. We stayed up late that night, made tea, ate toast, talked about nothing, about everything. In the morning I left. The house wasn't mine. Not really. It had always been his, and now it finally was again. I walked down the front steps without looking back. For once, I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was behind me, and exactly where I stood. Some people think justice is a moment, a single triumphant instant when the gavel slams, the wrong is righted, and everything is fixed. But they don't tell you about what comes after the headlines fade, after the crowds stop whispering, after the paperwork is filed and the doors are locked behind people you once called family. The truth is, justice doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like standing in your kitchen at sunrise, staring at a coffee mug that once belonged to your grandfather, and realizing you don't flinch when you pick it up anymore. It feels like walking through an old house barefoot, no longer afraid of the echoes. That's how it was those weeks after Emmett returned to Whitmore House. We didn't talk about Deborah, or the court case, or the betrayal. We talked about the back garden, about replanting Grandpa's tomatoes, about the loose stair that always squeaked and whether it should be fixed or left alone. Small things, healing things. Nora stayed in touch. She never sent a bill. I tried to pay her. She refused. "Sometimes justice is payment enough," she said. I don't know if I believe her, but I thanked her anyway. One afternoon, I sat on the back porch with Emmett. The late spring sun filtered through the trees. Bees buzzed somewhere out of sight. The swing creaked slightly under our weight. He turned to me quiet. "You know what the hardest part was?" I shook my head. "Not the years away, not the war, not even losing the house." He paused. "It was seeing Dad just watch and do nothing." I nodded. That silence had cut deeper than anything Deborah ever said. I don't think he'll ever forgive it. Neither will I. But forgiveness isn't a door you force open. It's a lock some people never earn the key to. A week later, Emmett hung a new frame in the hallway. A photo of Grandpa. In his workshop, sleeves rolled smiling like he'd just finished fixing something nobody else could. Underneath it, Emmett placed a small plaque. "He never left. We came back." It wasn't flashy, but it was perfect. As for me, I didn't move back into the house. I didn't need to. I visited often. I brought pie on Sundays. I helped paint the fence. Sometimes I sat alone on the steps and watched the street breathe. The neighbors didn't stare anymore. Some waved, some nodded. Most just left us alone. That was enough. One day a letter arrived. Plain envelope, no return address. Inside, 4 words written in my father's handwriting. "Return to base. Forgive me." No explanation, no signature. I read it once, then folded it and placed it inside the same lockbox Grandpa had left for Emmett. I never replied, because some things don't need answers. They just need endings. There's a moment after the dust settles when you start asking yourself what it was all for. Was it worth it? All the late nights, the courtrooms, the shame, the silence, the fight. Did reclaiming a house really matter that much? At first, I thought it was about the walls, the rooms where we laughed, the swing set, the sound of Grandpa's old records crackling through the floorboards. But now I understand it was never about the house. It was about not being erased. See, when someone steals your name, your history, your place, they're not just taking property. They're taking your right to belong. And when you grow up in a family that tells you love is conditional, that silence is loyalty, that abuse is just how it is, you start believing that maybe you deserve less. Maybe you're the problem. Maybe the best thing you can do is disappear. But that's a lie. And the older I get, the more I realize disappearing doesn't make the pain go away. It just lets the wrong people rewrite the story. You don't have to scream, you don't have to fight dirty, but you do have to stand up. You do have to say this happened. And I was there. And I matter. Sometimes the courtroom gives you justice, sometimes it doesn't. But standing up, That's the part no one can take. My brother spent 19 years defending a country that almost forgot him. I spent a lifetime defending a family that didn't even remember how to say my name with love. And yet, here we are, still standing, still here, still whole, even if a little cracked. The Whitmore house isn't perfect. The porch still leans. The tiles in the kitchen still shift under your heels. There are stains that won't come out, and windows that fog in the morning. But it's real. It's rooted. And it remembers us. One afternoon, I found a note in the mailbox. No stamp, just tucked there. It said I saw the sign back up. He would have been proud. No name, just that. It was enough. Because healing isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with applause or announcements. Healing is what happens when you choose to live in truth, even when no one claps. It's choosing to stop waiting for someone to love you the way they should have, and instead loving yourself enough to claim your own story. To say, this is where I come from, and I'm not ashamed to remember, not ashamed to return, not afraid to be seen. So if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been told you don't belong in the very house that raised you, let me say this. You are not a ghost. You are not forgotten. You are not too late to take your name back. Sometimes justice looks like a courtroom victory. Other times it looks like a woman standing alone on a quiet porch, screwing an old wooden sign back into place with her bare hands. And for the first time in years, feeling like it's home.